My name is Ellie Youngblood. I'm the manager of Fairfield Farm at the HotchKiss School, which is a private secondary boarding school in northwest corner of Connecticut. I actually grew up in Kent, Connecticut, which is about 25 minutes away from here in the same county. So when I got the job to come work and manage this farm, it felt like a really good opportunity to come back to where I first started. This is going to be my 7th season on this farm, and I came here right after graduating from college. So it's been an exciting, very steep learning curve.
Can you talk a little bit about like how you, the extent to which you kind of make decisions about how the land is managed? Is that something that you kind of do in cooperation with the kids?
The whole farm is 280 acres. It's pretty significant. And the school itself also has like almost 100 acres of woods attached to the campus. So all in all, the campus is a pretty significant chunk. It's like 800 acres all in with the woods and the farm. So there's a growing sense of, I would say, intentionality behind how the various facilities managers and people who are responsible for these larger chunks of land associated with the school, how we're treating them and the decisions that we're making and why we're making the decisions that we're making. At the farm itself, I am, like I said, I'm the only person that works exclusively on the farm. And I'm really responsible for the production side of what happens out here. So our cropland, our vegetable land I'm pretty much solely responsible for the decisions that are made out there. And then we have a significant amount of pasture land. We're only about 8 acres of vegetables, which I guess is, rather large. But the majority of the land here is in permanent pasture, and we have a herd of grass-fed cows that live out here with us. And I would say I'm definitely well-versed in regenerative principles, and I'm trying to move the farm strongly in that direction. So we're starting this year. I'm ditching my rototiller, which is terrifying, especially at the scale we're at. But I've just decided, we'll prep beds into what they need to be, but then I'm not gonna do any inversion tillage anymore, even to prep the beds. So that's going to be a big change, but I think it'll have really great results. Because we're an educational farm, it's that sort of thing that's so important for the kids to see in action. It's in the short term, it might mean there's, resources being distributed differently. And instead of doing a lot of weeding, we might be doing a lot of spreading mulch or, things like that. But that's really where they start to learn a lot about land stewardship, and they start to care about things is when they really personally experience that stuff and see the results of those sorts of changes. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and you kind of talked about this a little bit in addressing moving towards regenerative practices, but curious if you have any other aspirations about the farm, either now or kind of into the long-term future. Maybe that the school, does the school have kind of goals for how the land will, progress, and what's that long-term vision?
We actually are just about to, when I first started working here, others had drafted a master plan for the farm that was from 2013 or 2014 to 2020. And just the other day, my boss was like, "Oh, it's 2020. We got to do a new master plan." So I wasn't a part of constructing the old one, which was really more about building up infrastructure. The school has only owned this farm since 2008. So it's been a meteoric change on campus. It's really taken on a life of its own. So in the next phase, I would love to see an increased emphasis on, like I was saying, regenerative practices, trying to tie in some of the campus waste management efforts. But I would love to see us become part of a solution of how the school can creatively reuse those things and put them towards sustaining ourselves on a different level and closing the loop on campus, things like that.
So curious if you can talk a little bit about your experience as a woman in agriculture and kind of how your gender, might have interplayed or impacted your, work on the land or your kind of experience as a farmer.
Yeah, I think that the biggest blessing I've had in my agriculture career was the first farm I worked on when I was 16 was a 4-acre CSA. It had like 50 shares and a farm stand on site that was open on the weekends. And I got my first job there, and the woman who ran it was a woman, like I said, and she really I think it wasn't necessarily something I thought about at the time, but over the course of working there for a few summers, I really was struck by how like invested she was in making sure that I left her farm with a set of skills that I could, move forward and have gained a certain amount of competence and understanding about what was going on the farm. And she specifically had said to me at various times, like, today I'm going to teach you how to do this because I once worked for a man and he wouldn't teach me how to drive this tractor or how to do this, that, or the other thing. And she just like head on kind of threw me into a bunch of stuff, and also just really became someone who she was such a great mentor, such a great conversationalist. And to this day, like, she's still a close friend of mine, and I feel so lucky to have had my first, her specifically as my first farm boss, because she set an example that I'm still trying to, emulate in my own work as a manager. But I think that having had that like first person I met be a woman was very empowering for me, because it felt like something that was, that I could do. And she was really smart and charismatic. She is very smart and charismatic. Now that I'm like managing my own farm, I have like had more of the like negative aspects, I guess, of being a woman in agriculture. There's times where people will come to the farm, like, how ag salespeople will like come, or rental companies will just like roll into a farm and like look for whoever's in charge. I'll just have people say to me like, "Where's the man in charge?" And I'm like, "That's me." I'm the man in charge. Whatever you need. I think especially in like the smaller farms and in vegetable production, there's definitely a lot more women who are kind of taking the lead in that respect. I am disappointed by, and I think this is just, I can't explain why this is, because I know there's so many talented and exceptional female farmers out there, but especially like when you're online looking for videos or looking for books or whatever, the vast majority of all that stuff is just these men who are, talking about how great and innovative their farms are. And it's like, I'm so thankful that they're putting that stuff out there and that they're trying to be a resource. But at the same time, I'm like, we're all ladies. Like, come on, we're the women. Like, I know they're out there and they're probably actually running their farms instead of making YouTube content, which is great. But it just feels like such a lack of representation. I am very lucky that in this specific area in Litchfield County in Connecticut and in the adjacent counties in Massachusetts and in New York, there are a lot of really talented female farmers in the small to mid vegetable farming scale. So that's really great, because there's a lot of allies around and a lot of people who have kind of been through it, and they kind of run the gamut in age. And that's really great to know that that sort of like community exists.
Curious. So, it sounds like that was part of the reason you were compelled to join the Learning Circle in Warren. It's just the chance to kind of meet women from other communities nearby that are, and hear what their challenges are and kind of how they're working through them. Curious if anything stands out as what was kind of most valuable that you took away from the Learning Circle, like anything, that maybe impacted goals you've set on your land, or ways that you might have, stayed in touch with any of the other women or the resource providers that you met at the Learning Circle.
The woman who hosted that event, I do know her and I have a relationship with her, and she was the one who encouraged me to go. I went and I was, like I said, really excited and kind of surprised to like meet so many people that I didn't know. There was a lot of sharing, and it was too brief. Like there's always, these things are always too short, and it felt like it deserved more time or like multiple meetings. It really kind of felt like the start of something. I definitely left the learning circle in Warren being like, great, when are we doing this again? Like, let's do it every month. I don't know, or like I know 5 other people that should have been there that weren't there or whatever. I don't think I was the only person who was kind of having a unique experience in that we were like in a group of farmers who were all females who were doing the same thing and had come to that place because we all have an interest in climate change or whatnot. Mm-hmm. And I definitely got the sense from like when we were just talking and having a discussion that there were a lot of people who were just like grateful to be in that group of people and who were kind of just expressing like various emotions about the state of the world or the state of agriculture or things that people are struggling with. And it was almost like not even specifically about climate change in some ways. And that's why I said it felt like we needed more time, because I think we would have gotten there more intensely, but it was a lot more kind of like focused around, changing your relationship with your farm and having to reframe how you think about things in order to like be successful in kind of these changing times. And mm-hmm. That was interesting.
Yeah. I'm curious if you can speak a little bit to, other women in your area or across Connecticut that might be considering joining a learning circle that's coming up. Are there, things you would say for them as they're considering attending, or, advice you have on kind of how to make the most of it?
It's just a rare thing to be able to take the time to meet with a group of your peers about a shared concern like that. It's really, unfortunately, like a very rare thing. And I think that at least small farmers in New England and really everywhere, farmers period everywhere, are I think very attuned to the fact that climate change is really going to change everything for our our profession in the coming years, or if not like right now. It's happening all around us, and it's an issue that definitely deserves like our attention. And even if going to a meeting of that type, feels like a stretch as far as like your time or whatnot, it's actually like a really great opportunity to give yourself the space to reflect on, what am I really doing? Like, how am I going to be able to respond to these changes, intensifying weather patterns, and how am I going to be supportive in my community when there's a global pandemic and all of that sort of stuff. It's really, even if you don't necessarily go to something like that and like learn a ton, it's a really great opportunity to just have a intentional space to think about those things, and to hopefully hear what others are doing and maybe, spark a little bit of inspiration, which is great. And Connecticut's, generally speaking, it's a pretty small state, and there's no reason why we shouldn't have, these like farmer networks that are overlapping where we can be providing, resources for one another and leaning on each other in a positive way.